Great. So, hi everybody, and welcome to our webinar with Adam Parry, who's the creator of Event Tech Live. Thanks so much for joining us today to listen in about how he and his team turned Event Tech Live from a live event into a 5-day virtual extravaganza, and all the trials and tribulations of doing that. And he's very kindly offered to share his experience and learning, because I know some of you guys are going through similar kind of exercises just now in terms of, you've had a live event and you need to pivot to virtual, and how do you actually do that? And yeah, I think getting the lessons from someone who's been there, done it, is super helpful. So thank you so much, Adam, for joining us today. First of all, maybe you could just give us a bit of an intro to you and anyone that doesn't know you, and give us all the exciting stuff that you're working on just now.
Yeah, sure. So my day-to-day job, I'm the editor of a publication called Event Industry News, and we look at how events are delivered, planned, managed, and that can be everything from an exhibition to conference, corporate event, and from an international perspective as well. So we cover news all around the world. I think what led me, the story of getting to Event Tech Live was I'm quite passionate about technology. I'm one of those first adopters, get the iPhone straight away, spending way too much on gadgets and gizmos. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I was kind of really interested in what technology was doing for our sector, because it was really pushing other sectors along at a really fast pace. When I started to dig, it was really hard to find information about the work that suppliers like yourselves were doing in the market, who they're working with, and what organisers were doing as well. We could find pockets of information. When we started to write content on Event Industry News, it was quite apparent really quickly that it resonated with the wider sector. We did some feedback, we did some polling, and people were saying to us, it's really hard to understand who the leading companies or who's doing really good work at that time. So we initially launched the Event Technology Awards. That naturally, as most events did, rolled into kind of a conference during the day. And then again, polling feedback from the audience and obviously our sponsors and things like that. What there was a desire was to really have an opportunity on a much larger basis for knowledge share, networking, but also to spend time with these suppliers, really grilling them down on like, what does your technology do? Does it work for me? Having live demonstrations. And the exhibition format was that natural step away from that first initial conference. It allowed us to make the event free of charge. And, it allowed us to include a lot bigger, wider range of content, including now what we see at Event Tech Live, which is a dedicated marketing and marketing technology content stage, and also just provide a larger opportunity and a wider range of suppliers for the attendees to kind of engage with. We started off small. It was a 1-day event that grew into a 2-day event. It's grown to an international audience. Last time we did it as a physical event, we got around 47 different countries people visiting from.
Wow.
Obviously on a smaller scale, it's very much a UK European centric event at the moment. It's a physical event, but I think the news of the event has obviously gone far and wide. I think we've had people from Japan and Australia and all over the place. So that's kind of what led us to deliver the event. And to give you an idea of what Event Tech Live is, I mean, it really says it on the tin. It's an exhibition and conference based in London, really with the laser focus of discussing, sharing information, educating around technology in the different facets, everything from front-end audience engagement technologies to tech like we're using today, like StreamYard, to do this webinar. So it's a real diverse kind of setup in terms of content and exhibitor. But it seems to be working for the industry as a place to kind of touch base and see what's new in the industry and what's working.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, us at Tag Digital are huge fans and supporters of Event Tech Live. I think we're at the first one. Was it 2014? No, was it 2016? Was that the first one?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been such an amazing event for us year on year. We have had clients, like just this morning, I spoke to somebody who's in Hong Kong. We've had clients from Dubai, from the US, like really, has been such an amazing for us an event for us to kind of grow alongside you guys. So yeah, thanks. We've been partners for a long time. So yeah, it's absolutely helped us. And yeah, we were sad not to see all the friendly faces this year, but we really enjoy being part of the virtual experience as well. Great. So then let's get into going from kind of where you were thinking about a live event, which I guess, we'd spoken about, and I think you were like lots of people, like, this is the plan, but we have a contingency, which I think was great to kind of give that feedback to all of your suppliers and partners that, you're very open and transparent about it. So it'd be great to know kind of from your perspective what the main challenges were when you thought, right, we're going to pivot, and first of all hybrid and then fully virtual, and what your thought process was and all of that.
Sure. So I think, even though Event Tech Live is, like it says on the tin, it's an event technology event, we'd never delivered a virtual event before this event, and we'd never delivered a hybrid event. We'd always delivered a physical event with some live streaming technology. So in some cases, we were ahead of the curve or a little bit more comfortable than maybe others in the industry, because we had experience of working with technology suppliers. We had some partners in place already, such as yourself, that we knew could help us really deliver on our objectives. But it was still a challenge in the sense that there was some uncertainty about which way we should go. Every one of our exhibitors that was pre-booked into the show prior to the pandemic, obviously their desire was to have that physical event because everybody knows that's what works so well for them in lead generation, etc. But they also understood that there was a level of uncertainty about what could happen. What was really interesting for us was that the original go date was actually really, really close to our live date, so October the 1st, and we were supposed to be on site from, I think, November the 1st, building the show, getting it ready. So there was just, I think one of the major challenges was communication. That took up a huge amount of time in communicating and spending time one-to-one with all of our exhibitors and being transparent with what we were trying to do. Then came the step of obviously trying to work with those exhibitors and our technology providers to help them understand how to maximize the opportunity through the virtual event platform, because that was going to be part of it anyway. So we invested heavily early on in kind of some education, some communication on, right, this is how you leverage the best, because there's only a small proportion of the world that still participated in a virtual event, whether that be as a participant or actually as a sponsor and exhibitor. So it's a whole new landscape. When you sell somebody, shall we say, into a physical event or an exhibition, nobody needs that picture painting for them. They know exactly what they're buying. They're buying a stand, a space. They've got the design in place. They know how to approach that. Virtual events are totally different. It's a bit more distant. You've got to learn the technology, a process, and that kind of stuff. So that was another challenge: was how do we communicate this? How do we support our exhibitors in exhibiting or lead generating in a totally new way? That also trickled as well down to our visitors. They'd not necessarily accessed the platform like we've got. They were there to learn. And then as it came closer and closer to the event, we were obviously planning a hybrid. And then when the news got announced that there would be no October the 1st date, we probably had the best part of 30 days to shift everything to virtual. So time was kind of against us as well. And, we'd kind of gone out there and said we were going to deliver a 5-day hybrid event, 3 days married with the 2 days physical. So we felt that it's only right to continue down that path of 5 days of, as you put it earlier, the extravaganza. So on top of that, there was obviously a huge amount of work in terms of content delivery, onboarding, that kind of stuff. Many, many challenges. And like I say, our own experience, we knew what to do and potentially how to do it practically on paper. But until you live through it, you just don't have that experience of it, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was really interesting being on the other side of it, like dealing with the production company, getting kind of in the studio with them, learning the technology. Like, for us, you know, I feel it was communicated so well. Everything was so clear, but I'd imagine behind the scenes, you guys were like ducks going crazy. But yeah, it was very good. But yeah, there's just so many components, and you know, like you say, it's communicating all of that. So you've got all the speakers and the content, and you know, last minute I was like, what's the code for this? Where's my clicker? And I can just
Yeah.
imagine that is just like multiplied by a million. But yeah, no, it worked so well for the meetings point of view. That was one of the things I think we enjoyed the most, was like that interaction almost before your meetings, and everybody was kind of prepped. And whereas I think sometimes it showed people just rely on that face-to-face interaction and don't always put in the prep, whereas I feel like we were more organized, our meetings were very high quality, and that's definitely shown after the event as well.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I talk about technology, as much as I am an evangelist for the potential of what online or digital events could potentially open up for our sector in terms of revenue, reaching more people, making it more accessible, there are some things that you just cannot replicate online. And at the moment, some of that, and we may be able to overcome that, but some of that is that serendipity that just happens at an event. You know, you go to the networking bar, you sit down, you have a coffee, you see somebody pass that you used to work with, or a prospect that you were kind of targeting, and you just get that natural conversation going. And that's really hard online. So I think that was quite jarring to some people, because you're right, you know, there is an element of, with an exhibition, you can turn up and most likely something will happen. Whereas online, it's about the preparation work and the input kind of leading up to the event to get that, to maximize that opportunity
Yeah,
during it, and
definitely.
focusing more on the quality, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is a little more transactional, you know, which is good
Mm.
from a business point of view. But I think part of the thing that people love about live event is that like chat and interaction and all the fun stuff and experiential bit and the drinks, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's all of that. But yeah, I feel like there was a huge amount of positives. So then moving on, what would be the biggest successes that you felt that you got out of virtual ETL, and the kind of big positives that you've taken away from it?
Sure. So one of the key principles of Event Tech Live has always been to put on a lot of content, education, because with any technology, the challenge of adoption always comes through the understanding and the knowledge of how to do it. Now, within the events industry, it's unlike any other technology, where most of that technology that you're using is in or around the event. These are immovable dates, so you don't get another chance at it. Whereas, you know, the software, CRM systems, whatever else we use in our day-to-day life, there's always that second chance. So we've always wanted to put education as a cornerstone of the event in order to help people understand and help people adopt. That then trickles down to the suppliers. They get more business, they're allowed to innovate, they're allowed to expand, they bring new technologies to the market. We should get better as a sector. And that's always been a really good part of Event Tech Live. But obviously, like I said prior, Event Tech Live has been very much focused as a European event. So we know technology adoption is quite large in like North America, in the Middle East, in the APAC region. And it's been one of our challenges always to reach the people that are interested in that. So one of the biggest successes for Event Tech Live was that we over doubled our country figure in terms of the reach that we got of people engaging
Really?
with the event. That was really good. And then that was filtered back to us by some of the exhibitors as well, that they'd managed to kind of start to build relationships or target people in regions where it would have cost them quite a lot of money to either go to a physical event there or even target people in those regions. So I think the content and the reach that we were able to do over the 5 days was kind of one of our really big successes, and that was reflected in the session views, which were over 15,000 across the sessions that we had across the week. And in some cases, some of those sessions were attended by 4 to 5 times the amount of people we would have been able to fit on our main stage.
Yeah, exactly.
So we
Yeah, that's
accommodated
great.
a lot more. I would say that was one of the biggest successes.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, that's been so true for us. We've all of our kind of prospects are international, that's come off the back of this. Whereas I would say previous years, yeah, probably would be more European, maybe a little bit Middle East, but yeah, really diverse mix of countries, which is great. And I guess the big plus on the virtual side, and it does just save you so much in terms of travel and things, and probably a reason that people wouldn't come to ETL. So yeah, I think that is a huge positive. That's great. And then you've also got all of that content now, I guess, that you can use for on demand, which is, great. And I know you always did a bit of the live streaming anyway, but I guess now people are more used to accessing that content, whereas I feel before, like you said, it wasn't that much of a natural thing, to access the content after, whereas I feel like that's a behavior that we're all kind of getting into. So I'd imagine there's higher sessions and engagement with that now still. Would that be true?
Yeah, I think it extends the value of the event and the participants in that event, whether that be an exhibitor that's been speaking or a panel discussion. And you're absolutely right. People are now kind of switched on to the idea. It's almost, I could see it almost being jarring if content wasn't available after event now going forward. I think there's still so much value in getting people into an event, whether it be virtual or physical, in the moment, because there's interaction, there's Q&A, there's that live element to it. But we are busy people, and also sometimes it might be just one session or maybe a couple of sessions that you want to go to, and having access to that content, maybe you want to share it with your team or dissect it a little bit more and really go into it. So having that content on demand will just, I think, really allow to extend the value of the event much, much longer and provide more value back to the sector.
Yeah, totally agree. So thinking about the marketing and promotion of the event, did you do anything differently? Like you said, there's been lots of international attendees. Were you focused on that? I know we did a bit of it, but it would just be interesting to hear kind of overall, was there a kind of change in strategy from what you normally do?
I would say on the whole, we kept the strategy the same because what everybody does, including yourself, really works for us. So it wasn't broken. We just needed to cast the net a little bit wider because there was much more opportunity for people further afield to come into an event. Maybe we spent a little bit more budget in that international marketing. And even more so because it's actually, the conversion is much quicker to get somebody to sign up online because they've not got to think about flights and hotels and accommodation and their diary and time out of the event. They can, for a virtual online event, they can kind of go, yep, I'm going to kind of register that. And if I can go, I can go. If I can't, I'll kind of catch up or do that replay element to it. Whereas with a physical event, there's much more decision making going into actually attending, especially if you are international. So we focused a little bit more on working with some of the international trade publications, some of those that have audiences in other areas, just to kind of let their audiences know that there is this event and they could come. But really, the partners we've got in place, like yourselves, Glean In, and what we do elsewhere with marketing really, really works. We did introduce one new product for marketing this year, which was from Glean In, which we were on their beta for a product called Glean In X. And that was really based around speakers being an influencer in inviting their audience back into the event. And I think if I was to look ahead again next year, and I know we spoke about this again briefly this year, it would be to look at leveraging retargeting packages for our customers, because with online events or with hybrid events, the web traffic significantly increase, so you can collect more data around them and then offer that back out to exhibitors. So I would probably look at that and also utilize that data and information for remarketing the content and possibly driving, more engagements with the on-demand content as well.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that is the other big benefit, is the amount of traffic you get, but also the quality of the data, because everything is happening online. So it's really easy to see, and I know you always have tech at the events to help you with that, but not every organizer does, I think, in terms of sessions attended, how engaged attendees were, how long they watched for, all of that, which I think is so valuable for organizers to resell. And that's something that we've seen a huge uplift in this year is audience extension, that, it was always something that we did, but nobody really was that bothered about it. Whereas this year, we've definitely seen, okay, we need to monetize this data that we've got. And yeah, I think the data people are getting on the back of the virtual events is is a lot more meaningful, and especially if you compare that with things, you know, that Glean In are doing. I think that's really exciting, and I think that'll remain, you know, whatever happens next year. I think that's always going to be part of the fabric now that people are thinking, you know, we need to monetize our data, we need to use digital, and it's going to it's just happened so much faster. You know, all these digital transformations that take years have happened in a few months. And yeah, what do you think? How will it influence you for next year? Do you think, okay, I'm going to, like, what would be your ideal, I suppose, for next year, kind of knowing what you know now about virtual and live and how it fits together and the pros and cons of both of those?
Sure. So you're asking me kind of still in 2020. So my honest feeling at the moment is that I'm not going to try and replicate a 5-day virtual event paired with a 2-day physical. I think right now, with my size of team and with the limitations of programming and technology and such, it would be quite a big undertaking for my team to deliver both at the same time. And I say both because in my mind, what we went through as a virtual event is just as big a project as a physical event, and my team's obviously at some point on a physical event. I think also from an exhibitor or from a sponsor, it also increases the workload, so they either need more people or their time's more stretched. So I'm not sure for us specifically whether that'd be the right thing to do. We will look to do some online content and some online engagement and networking, but as a more of a reduced scale, and then really unleash the power of that on-site content and put that online for people to engage with around. So more of a streamlined version of what we had planned probably this last year. I think going on top of that though, what struck me, we've been asked by a number of our exhibitors and sponsors over the years of, do we have any plans to take what we have here in the UK and geolocate it, take it to the regions that they want to expand into, you know, with organisers in different locations. Any geolocation is a huge financial risk, and you're going into markets that you don't, you know, it's a total different ballgame. But I think we'll start to use virtual or online events to kind of curate specific content around regions or maybe around topics, and then start to build that into a way to keep in touch with our community all year round. Because even we were guilty of probably going quite quiet on our audience for a number of months after the event, in between registration cycles and things like that, because there wasn't necessarily anything fresh to really say other than kind of reminding them about the content that was recorded at the last event. And I think technology moves at such a fast rate. I mean, look at the last 8 and 9 months for our industry. It's changed dramatically. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of do some update events kind of thing. This is where marketing technology is at the moment, halfway through the year, or this is where sales tech is, or this is, you know, this is something for this region, etc. And I think that's the way that many organizers will go. They'll have their core principal events, you know, those real key moments in the year where they bring people together physically, but then use online and digital as a way to keep people connected and engaged. And it will be more of a hybrid approach rather than necessarily a hybrid event. But we'll see.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really exciting. You know, if you had maybe smaller virtual events just to test the market, like you say, it's so expensive. But if you said, okay, we're going to do like a kind of launch event in the US, and it's going to be small and quite focused maybe on these niches within event tech, then it's just such a great way, because launch events are, you know, even more expensive. So yeah, I think that would be a really, really good thing to do. And like you say, gets all the internationals in without the risk. And then you have the kind of main in-person event with all the content available, which I think would be hugely appealing to a lot of organisers and people in event tech. That sounds great. And then, and would you have a 5-day? Would you do a 5-day in person next year, do you think?
We do a 2-day physical as we've done before. I think we take that content and find a way to provide that online to those people that wanted to view or engage remotely, but also focus on a way to make them feel part of the physical event, whether that be about easy communication with people. I think we probably do a couple of shorter digital lead-in days, so maybe some live,
That's nice
maybe a couple of live content pieces, and probably focus actually more on those leading up days on still education, but also connecting people up. So maybe focusing more on things like roundtables, informal networking, speed networking, that kind of stuff. I don't feel we did enough of that in this last event, and maybe that's a bit of the secret sauce I felt was missing that you get at that live. And so maybe we can create that online. But I certainly won't at this stage be doing a 5-day virtual with a 2-day physical. I think I'm losing my hair already.
And the awards, not to forget, you did the awards as well.
True.
Which I was really impressed with how you guys put that together, because that is not an easy thing to pull off online, but it made it fun and gave everyone like a bit of a break and a bit of connection, which I think is the best thing you can kind of do with awards. It was good. And for anyone that didn't see it, we had to pre-record our reactions, imagining if we had won, which gave us all a laugh on a Monday morning when we were popping out the champagne.
That was a difficult decision, because obviously with any award you have an element of, there are, unfortunately, as much as there are winners, there are obviously companies that don't win. And we went backwards and forwards on that, like, is this a really awful thing to do? But then we found a way to kind of incorporate everybody. And do you know what? As much as me and James, my co-host, we tried to make it fun between us, that wasn't a patch on obviously those reactions and the effort that people have gone into creating those little moments. I don't think we can do it justice talking about it, to be honest with you. You have to see it, but it really did make the difference. So we're really thankful for everybody to take the time, even if you didn't necessarily win an award.
I thought it was really a great thing to do, because before we were like, how does it work, and you're not going to have everybody on, but it was so simple. But we had a laugh doing it, and I'm sure some of the videos were so creative that people were like, all right, okay, that's what we'll do next year. But no, I thought the awards was, it's hard to do that, but it was really smart.
Thank you.
And then touching on it, you kind of touched on some of the learnings. What's the biggest learning that you'll kind of take away from it? What would you do differently if you had to do it all again next year?
Okay. If I'm thinking about it from what an exhibition is, which is a lead generation event, the bulk of our revenue, or all of our revenue, comes from exhibitors and sponsors like yourself investing in the event for it to be a business opportunity for them as well. Yes, it's about networking, engaging, being part of a community, supporting an event and a theme in the industry, but it does boil down to lead generation. And I think there's two kind of key learnings when it comes to online events in that format, and that is how the audience or how attendees interact with you is totally different. A physical event, you can stop people, you can say hi, they will naturally, due to dwell time, kind of come across your stand and engage with you if they're either buying that product or maybe interested. But online, people tend to be more focused on content. And then online, they've got Slack and emails open, and maybe like me, the little son in the background going away. So there's many more distractions. So those meetings take more time and effort to actually go from a pending meeting to a confirmed meeting. So some of the area of focus for us is how can we encourage visitors to be a bit more responsive, not turn up to meetings that are meaningless, or respond to people, actually be there and engage. So for me as an organizer, as an exhibition organizer, that's some of the things that we need to help lubricate with our visitors. They just people act totally differently online, much more hidden, much more behind the scenes,
faceless. For sure.
So that's kind of one of the key areas that I would focus on. And like I just mentioned, also incorporating more networking and FaceTime opportunities, but again, bringing people together around a topic or a niche. Because I think throwing people into a Zoom just for the sake of throwing them into a Zoom really doesn't give anybody any direction, and especially if you don't know anybody, it's really hard. So I think if we can bring people together around a theme or an idea, we had a women in event tech one. I don't know whether you went to it yourself, Laura, this year. That seemed to work well, and we want to do more of that. So there's a clear idea of the type of people you're going to meet, and maybe you're going to have a little bit of a discussion, but it's very informal. It's all around that. So more of that stuff, more fun stuff, because it is really hard to engage with an event externally when you're not there in person.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And yeah, we've done kind of similar with, our team, and saying, okay, we need to meet up and have a chat, but it can be just kind of quite a fragmented way to do it. So we have topics, or like, do you believe in aliens, or just something like soft to start it, or we have, but as you say, like having a real niche that it's around, and inviting that set of people that say, oh, I know about this, I'm passionate about this, then I think they get so much more out of it, because it can just be a bit awkward, and that's the other thing I think, when there's so many online kind of experiences happening, when there's so many people on, the natural dynamic of conversation doesn't happen, because you would usually splinter into maybe 2 or 3 people, but it's only one person at a time talking. So I think it's just a whole new way of communicating. But yeah, I like the idea of kind of smaller, more focused chats to give everybody a chance to speak, and add a bit of context to the networking, because I think people just don't turn up for networking, but yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and how you kind of continue to improve that communication dynamic. And then kind of moving on to, if you had somebody who's maybe listening today, who's moving from live to virtual, what advice would you give to them, based on what you know?
My biggest piece of advice would be, don't be afraid to try things differently. I think the biggest mistake can be, and it's said time and time again in by other people in the industry as well as myself, and it's so true, of trying to literally carbon copy your physical event online. People, in my experience and having experienced at Event Tech Live, they want different things. They want possibly shorter sessions, more snappy sessions, a wider range of diverse content and topics. They do actually want to be able to engage, so making sure you have Q&A software, or the technology that your platform that you're working with has Q&A, being able to, like the comments that are coming in today, it's really important for people to have that feedback when they're remote. So that's really important. I would say make sure that whoever you give the job of working with the platform is interested in technology. And for any event organizer that's watching this today, no offense, but just because you're great at delivering a physical event doesn't mean you're great at putting, or even want to put, a virtual event platform together. It's a totally different thing. So, decide within your team who's best fit to work with the technology provider on building the virtual event platform out, maybe dealing with the live streaming company, understanding the mechanisms. That is where I would really put a lot of your time, is do practice runs, rehearsals, really go through every part of the platform over and over again leading up to it. So when it comes to live days, and maybe you need to change something quickly, or maybe you need to switch something on or off, etc., you're really comfortable in that position. Don't leave all of that till right at the last minute and think, oh, we can just switch the platform on and it's all going to work. Nobody needs to worry about it. But just take risks with it, have some fun, get a magician involved. I've seen loads of people do a cooking session with one of the sponsors, or with one of the well-known kind of faces of the sector. That just breaks things up, and gin tastings, and it's all of that kind of stuff combined with that really good core education, learning and networking that people are used to at physical events, that can really do things differently. We have a challenge every year with alcohol licensing and things like that, but online people can drink as much as they want at home. Yeah, it
That's
just
so
would be
true.
easy
And
to.
yeah, I think people are so tolerant of like new ideas and trying things out at the moment. Like there's a really still supportive atmosphere, but I feel like where they've got no patience is when the tech doesn't work. And it's just like, where is it? I can't hear this. It's just like immediately. Whereas I think, yeah, you're right, spend the time getting the tech right and working. And then I think people are much more tolerant of new ideas or stuff doesn't work. And I think it's all done with kind of the best intent.
You're absolutely right, Laura. Communication is key. We ended up having we were supposed to go live with the awards at I think like 7:30 or something like that, and it just beggars belief that at that moment in time, the live streaming company had to reboot a server because on their end, a machine, sorry, a live stream machine, and it just took. It took 3 or 4 minutes, but it seemed like a lifetime. And in that moment, everybody was like, oh, it's not working. Have I missed it? Am I in the right place? Blah, blah,
I
blah.
know.
At the real awards, we're late every year, but we're dragging people away from the bar. So
I
it's a
know.
totally different play. But yeah.
I know, that's it. Like at the real awards, like we're usually there 4 or 5 hours or something like that. This is a 45-minute ceremony. I was like, what is happening? Like just no patience at all. So yeah, I think that's it. We've just all got very spoiled now that we want everything right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really good advice. I should say if anyone's got any questions, actually just pop them in the comments, and we'll get on to them in a sec.
Steph got some in the private chat for us, Laura, as well. I've seen those coming.
Has she?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Hold on. There it is there. I'm just totally blind. I'll take a couple of these then before we go on to your final couple of questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So has there been a big difference in number of visitors going virtual to live? You don't have to share your kind of stats, but just be interesting to know in the pre-reg or attendance, anything that kind of surprised you there.
Yeah, there has absolutely. I mean, it's got to be remembered that we delivered if a virtual event, unfortunately for our sector, in the middle of a pandemic, which means there was a huge proportion of the industry everywhere in the world who is, either furloughed, maybe even possibly maybe being made redundant and things like that. So we had a target in mind, and that target for us was to meet the same level of attendance we get at the live event. And we actually just overshot that by about 10-15%. So we were really happy with that. And I think we've always really focused on a smaller proportion of the industry, like other events that out there in the sector that serve many things for many people, from inspiration to theming to set design to AV to all that kind of stuff. We are, like I said before, we are laser focused on technology. So for us, we are kind of really focused on a smaller proportion of what an attendee might look like, certainly a budget holder. So we were really happy with that. But the ability to reach more people online is absolutely there. One of my friends in the sector who organises an event in Brighton, they really max out their event every year at about 3,000 attendees, and they're packed to the rafters of the venues that they can use down there. This year they went virtual and they did 12,000 attendees.
Wow.
So they've 4x their overall reach. And I think we'll see that as part of every event. Never do the same people relatively go back to an event 3-5 years on the trot. They'll dip in, they'll dip out, they'll have other things that get in the way. Whereas online, we can still be a part of that community and about an event, no matter what else we've got going on. So even mega events that we see like Mobile World Congress or Money 2020, those kind of events, I think Web Summit is just about to go live, isn't it? And they're talking about over 100,000 attendees engaging with that event over the next couple of days. And I think that's one of the things that we'll see. Audience will grow and grow and grow around events purely because the ability to engage with them, the barrier to entry is much lower now.
So true. Yeah. And I think that's the amazing thing is, people, you've now built these kind of huge universes of data that you just didn't have or you wouldn't have got because people think, oh, well, I can't go to Brighton or I can't go to Dubai or whatever. Whereas now you're like, well, I've got 100,000 new emails that maybe they will come next year, maybe they will sponsor. So, the value of the data is absolutely huge. So I think that is really exciting. And yeah, we've seen the same thing. I think cost per acquisition has gone down for a lot of clients. dependent on what they're doing, and attendance has gone up. So there has been a lot of positives. It kind of went up and down. Attendance was like up hugely at the beginning because I think everyone was like floundering and just wanted something to hold on to.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went down. But yeah, as you say, I'd say we've kind of seen an average of maybe like 60% as opposed to 50% attendance, which is great. Any kind of uplift in attendance is what everyone's kind of looking for. So yeah, that's interesting to hear your perspective too. And then, do you have recommendations? You are the man in tech, so any recommendations of the best platform to use for virtual or hybrid events?
No, because all of my customers, if I don't mention them, will probably send me nasty emails and WhatsApps. No, in all seriousness, there are hundreds of brilliant technology platforms out there. But just like the event format will dictate what type of venue you want, you really need to approach it in the same way. So an example of this, one that I will mention, is a company called Shindig, and they're really focused on that experience of networking. So you can participate as an attendee, you can watch a speaker or a DJ or a stage or whatever, but you can also kind of wander over to somebody and then you kind of create this little bubble, and you have a private chat face to face within the bubble, and you can still hear what's going else off. So with something like an awards, or just like a Thanksgiving, a Christmas event or a networking event or anything like that, that's perfect. When it comes to maybe you're an exhibition organizer or you're dealing with exhibitors and sponsors and stuff, then there are other technologies like Swapcard Grip, Events Case, others out there that are fantastic. But you know what? If you just want to stream content online, then something like StreamYard that we're using today is a great one. You can embed it in a private website. You can still create comments. Hopin is another one that I'm sure everybody's heard of, that you can kind of stream live content into. So my biggest advice around choosing a platform or finding the best platform for you really boils down to a couple of factors. Obviously, budget. What your budget will dictate what you can really achieve. But make a list of the absolute necessities. Don't get kind of carried away with loads of different functions and features and bells and whistles, because you might not necessarily use them. You need to start off focusing on foundations. And then my last piece of advice when it comes to choosing a platform is remember that there are still human beings, teams behind these that are there to support you. So interview that company as if they're an on-site contractor, as if they're your security company, AV company, medical company. Find the ones that you just feel comfortable with, because service is so important when it comes to these virtual events. It's not a Microsoft Word where if it crashes 1 minute, you can reboot it and you're all good. We're talking about live events. So I think that's so important. I have this running theme at the moment where I say that for our sector, SaaS should mean software and a service rather than as a service.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
So yeah, I'm sorry I've not given you a definitive list of this is the one company to go with, but it really boils down to what your objectives are and what you want to achieve.
I think that's really true, and I think that's a really good point about interviewing, because you maybe do think of technology companies as a bit more faceless. I know I couldn't speak to someone, but actually you're right, they are going to be like probably the most important thing about the event. If that doesn't work, then the whole thing is kaput. So yeah, I think that's a really good tip. Great. And then how would you advise another event organizer to motivate attendees to attend? Like, was there anything else you did, or you felt that's the thing that they, got them kind of over the line?
Yeah, so you don't have to go to town on this, and I'm going to use the term personalize very loosely, but I think it's really interesting to kind of divide your audience up into maybe 3 or 4 key areas, and understand why they are coming. Are they just here for the content? Do they actually want to meet other people in the sector like them? Do they have some challenges that they're trying to overcome and they're just looking for answers? Or are they there to buy? Because all of those different things, and I'm sure there are more, means there's ways that you can motivate those attendees to come. And understanding the key objectives of why your attendees coming will make that job easier for yourself. You can do this in a registration form. You can do this as part of the quick onboarding on the event. And if you proposition those 3 or 4 questions in a way that by giving us this information, we'll allow you to maximize and save time and get the information that you want, then ultimately they'll be more motivated to turn up, and they'll go away from the event feeling more accomplished, and the event was of a higher value. I think it's very, very easy to think that everybody's there for the same thing and wants a little bit of everything, which is not necessarily the case. So I think motivating that back to putting some fun stuff on, give people some variety on stuff that they can do. If you're selling tickets, maybe create some kind of referral program or things like that, because when attendees start to get other attendees to come to your event, then that recommendation or that invite is very powerful to get people to turn up. Back to Gleaning X, we saw a number of our speakers invite their networks personally through WhatsApp and Twitter and stuff, and the conversion rates on those were really high. So tap into that as well. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, love that. That sounds very sensible. And then finally, I guess this is a hard one to answer, but what is the biggest challenge you think event organisers might face next year? I mean, given that we probably had no clue what was going to happen this year, any ideas or anything?
We can only live each day as it comes, can't we? Okay, so I'm not going to talk about technology for a second. I think our biggest challenge as event organisers will be driven by our own desire to get back to face as soon as possible. And our biggest challenge is to ensure that we make sure that the attendees feel safe, and more importantly, the employers of those attendees feel not liable by sending their staff or their network to an event. I think that's really important. Now, we're obviously going to come up with various different ways to do that. Initially probably social distance event, high cleanliness levels, contact tracing, all of these things. But it'll also play a huge role in our marketing. I think, the communication and the messaging that we send out to attendees, just in the same way that you see car adverts, really go down purely down the road of, like, I think Volvo for years went down the route of safety, didn't they? That's the way that they sold their cars. Airlines, rely on safety marketing and messaging, you're safe in our hands and things like that. And whether we like it or not, whether we think we've got the safest event on the planet, there will be for a while an element of risk. That's going to be our biggest challenge, is making sure that our attendees understand how we make them safe and feel safe.
Yeah, totally. And probably going back to one of the first things you said is just the communication of that, making sure that's really clear, people understand what you're doing, they can communicate it to somebody else, because I guess it's, them communicating it to their employer or other stakeholders in the business they need to convince. So yeah, I think that communication will absolutely be part of it. Amazing. That's all of our questions. And then there's just one final thing that we've got, and then we'll see if there's anything else. But yeah, just I guess out of it all, what surprised you the most, pleasantly or unpleasantly? But yeah, what's been your biggest surprise out of all this whole experience?
I'm going to talk about something personal. For me, my biggest surprise was my change in my mood leading up to the event. I'm generally a really positive guy, nothing much really phases me. My glass is always half full rather than half empty. That's just the way that I am. But the closer it got to my event happening, especially once I knew that the physical event couldn't happen, I think it's built into me. I'm an event person. I love being on site. I love having the high vis, walking around, doing 20,000 steps a day, meeting everybody, shaking hands, all that kind of stuff. Having the hangover of the last day of the awards and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we've probably, there are organizations that have touched upon this, but that's been a real challenging thing. Was a real challenging thing for me personally to deal with, to stay motivated, upbeat, and positive while feeling very disconnected from what my event had become, and pining after. It sounds weird, doesn't it? But pining after going on a train to London for a week and walking around the warehouse and stuff. But I
Yeah.
think that's what makes the events industry great. You know, if you're an event person, you live and breathe that kind of stuff. Being on site is
Yeah.
just it's electric, isn't it? So that was kind of the biggest shock to me and the biggest surprise, and one of the things that I personally kind of had to deal with over that period of time. And I'm sure there's many organisers, whether it's exhibitions, conferences, corporate events, whatever, that probably also felt maybe have felt very much the same.
Yeah.
And weirdly, you can't. It's not a problem because there's benefits to stopping at home and stuff like that, like not missing your kids and things. But
Yeah.
it's just that took me by surprise. I didn't expect
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That I didn't have any of that camaraderie, and I think that might change
That's
going
it.
forward. Because if we still have to deliver virtual events or online events, then teams don't necessarily have to be kind of separated out. They can come together on venues and stuff like that and work together and stuff. So there's some of that, but yeah, that was my biggest
Yeah.
surprise.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think it is. It's so true. It's the culmination, and especially for you, you put your heart and soul into that for a year, and then it's like the end is the event, and then it's almost like it's not there in the same sense.
Yeah,
And of course, you're happy you've got an event happening, but it's just different. And yeah, I'd imagine there's just that kind of real end of the whole thing.
yeah,
Maybe didn't feel as much there as it normally would. Yeah, I'm sure lots of people are feeling the same thing. You do get such a buzz, and I think when you're at the event, you are so focused for those 3 days. You've got quite a singular focus throughout that time, and we are constantly distracted by stuff all the time. And I think when you're doing something you're very focused on, you get a real high from it, and I think we all get that kind of adrenaline and focus, and not we're just constantly distracted, pulled in a million directions. So yeah, I think that's probably the thing that we're all missing, as well as human connection, which we all absolutely need, and that's probably why we're craving this normality and being back to people. But you're totally right, you need that safety element too. So yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm sure a lot of people have kind of experienced that themselves as well. Great. Well, I think that's kind of everything from our side that we wanted to cover. So thank you so much for being so honest and for sharing all of that. I think that's what we need, is that honesty and vulnerability and transparency in order to kind of help us all to succeed
yeah.
and to do the next bit of this journey. So thank you so much, Adam, for
No, thanks
sharing.
for having me, mate. It's been a pleasure. It's different for me being the one on the other side being interviewed.
I
I'm used to
know.
getting the interviewing,
I
so
know. I
it's
feel
been a
like I got the
pleasure.
easy job today. But yeah, no, we'll make the broadcast available. We'll share it with everybody, and yeah, hopefully get to see you soon.
Yeah, need to, absolutely, mate. In person, right back as soon as we can, right?
For sure. All right, you take care. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Bye now. Bye.